"You can sleep in the garage. There's an old cot out there, my son," Julian said. His voice was casual, almost breezy, a chilling monotone devoid of malice, which somehow made the words infinitely more cruel. He gestured vaguely toward the laundry room door, his eyes already drifting back to his wife, Chloe, who was laughing as she directed her family, her mother, her father, her visiting aunt and uncle, to the beautifully appointed guest suites upstairs. My son's new, sprawling house in Irvine, the house my money had helped secure, the house where I was just offered the garage. The next day, after the sun rose on their perfect, curated Christmas morning, everyone would discover what I had done in the desperate, silent hours of the night. And the inheritance they were all so clearly counting on, the magnificent Pasadena home I still lived in, would become a place none of them, especially my son, would ever sleep in again. My name is Eleanor Johnson. I am 56 years old, and this is the story I kept locked in the vault of my heart for too long. I held it in silence, not from shame, but because it took me years to finally understand that a mother's love, no matter how elemental and pure, must have a boundary. Without one, it ceases to be love and becomes a weapon, a tool of self-destruction, handed freely to those you would die for. It all began its insidious, subtle unraveling 3 years ago, when Julian turned 32. He had been married for 2 years to Chloe, a woman sculpted from the profound, old money wealth of Newport Beach. She always treated me with courtesy, a cold, brittle, paper-thin courtesy that felt more like an insult than warmth, but courtesy nonetheless. I lived alone in the house my husband, Arthur, and I had built, brick by loving brick, over 30 years of shared laughter and quiet, dignified struggles. It was a 2-story craftsman in a leafy, forgotten corner of Pasadena, with a wide front porch where we drank iced tea and a backyard dominated by a chaotic, violent explosion of purple bougainvillea that Arthur had adored. That house smelled of fresh coffee every morning and, on Sundays, the warm, sharp scent of the cinnamon rolls he loved. When Arthur was stolen from me, 5 years ago, by a sudden, brutal coronary that offered no chance for goodbye, the house felt cavernous. It became an echo chamber of my grief, but it was my sanctuary. Every floorboard held his voice, every window framed the memory of his laugh. Julian was my only son. After Arthur was gone, I poured the entirety of my fractured life into him. He studied business at USC, landed a respectable, if uninspiring, job at a logistics firm, and married Chloe in a lavish, sun-drenched wedding in Napa Valley that cost more than my annual salary. I truly, desperately believed, happy for him. Chloe's family was monolithic in their wealth. Her father, Marcus, owned a chain of high-end steakhouses that dotted the California coast. Her mother, Margaret, was a woman perpetually draped in understated pearls and cashmere, who surveyed the world with a polite, critical smile that never quite reached her eyes. The very first time she visited my Pasadena home, she'd glided through my comfortable, book-filled living room, running a finger over a wooden table, and said, "What a cozy house, Eleanor." I smiled. I said nothing, but I understood the message. Small, quaint, unimportant. After the wedding, Julian and Chloe moved into a sleek, glass-walled high-rise near downtown L.A. I visited once a month, a self-imposed schedule. I always came bearing gifts, a homemade meatloaf, using the recipe Julian had loved since childhood, or a deep-dish apple pie. Chloe would accept them with that polite, thin smile. "Thank you, Eleanor, but we're really watching our diet right now. Julian's on a new regimen." I would nod, swallow the small, familiar ache of rejection, and return to Pasadena alone, often with the still warm food on the passenger seat beside me. The months blurred into a quiet rhythm of polite exclusion. Julian's calls grew shorter, more infrequent. "Mom, I've got a meeting. I'll call you later." Later never came. But I understood, or at least, I told myself I did. Children grow up, they cleave, they build their own lives. This is the natural, painful, beautiful order of things. Then, one day, he called, his voice bright with a genuine, unfiltered excitement I hadn't heard in years. "Mom, we have news. Chloe's pregnant." My heart, which I thought had grown dormant and dusty, filled with a sudden, brilliant light. I was going to be a grandmother. I wept with pure, unadulterated joy that night, clutching Arthur's photograph to my chest. "You're going to be a grandfather, my love?" I whispered to the empty room. "Oh, Arthur, I wish you were here to see this." During the pregnancy, I tried to bridge the gap. I saw it as a new beginning, a chance for us to truly become a family. I offered to go to appointments. I offered to help shop for the baby. I offered to bring over the chicken soup my own mother had made for me, the kind that cured everything. The rejections were swift, polite, and always delivered by Chloe. "Thanks, Eleanor, but my mother is already flying in for that." "Thanks, but we've already bought everything online. We have a registry." When my granddaughter, Lily, was born, I sat in the sterile, beige hospital waiting room for 2 hours while Margaret and Marcus were inside. When they finally emerged, Margaret bestowed upon me that sharp, triumphant smile, as if she herself had accomplished a great feat. "You can go in now," she announced, her voice resonating with ownership, as if granting me an audience. "But don't wake Chloe, she's exhausted." I tiptoed in. The room was dim and smelled of antiseptic and flowers. Chloe was, indeed, asleep, or pretending to be. Julian, looking tired but euphoric, was holding a small, perfect pink bundle. "Look, Mom, it's Lily." He carefully handed her to me. The world stopped. The buzzing of the hospital, the distant beeping, the ache in my back, it all evaporated. She was so small, she smelled like powder and miracles. I touched her tiny, perfect starfish hand, and her fingers instinctively curled around my pinky. "Welcome to the world, my love," I whispered, my voice thick with tears. It was the single most beautiful, profound moment of my life since Julian himself was born. It was also the last moment I truly felt part of their family. The next day, I returned, my heart full. I brought clean clothes for Julian and a thermos of the warm, healing soup I had simmered for hours for Chloe. The nurse at the maternity ward desk stopped me, her face a mask of practiced indifference. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Immediate family only today." I'm the grandmother," I stammered, the thermos suddenly heavy. "Yes," the nurse said, her eyes flat, avoiding mine. "But Mrs. Delgado left specific instructions. Only her mother, Mrs. Clark, is permitted to visit today." I stood there, frozen, the warm thermos in my hands. A moment later, I watched Margaret sweep past the desk, carrying a large Louis Vuitton overnight bag, nodding at the nurse like she owned the place. The nurse smiled warmly at her. "Right this way, Mrs. Clark." I turned around. I went home. I sat in my quiet kitchen. I poured the soup down the drain. And for the first time, I felt something vital and trusting inside me crack, a hairline fracture in the foundation of my world. The months after Lily's birth were a masterclass in polite exclusion. I called every few days. The answers were always rushed, always from Julian. "Everything's fine, Mom. Baby's healthy. Chloe's recovering. Can I come visit? I'll just stay for an hour." "Ah, better wait, Mom. Chloe really needs her rest. The baby's on a strict schedule." I waited 1 week, 2, 3. Finally, Julian invited me for a Sunday lunch. "But don't bring anything, Mom. Chloe has it covered." I arrived, my heart pounding with a pathetic, eager hope. I brought a beautiful bouquet of lilies and a soft, hand-knitted bear for Lily. Chloe opened the door, the baby balanced perfectly and professionally on her hip. "Hello, Eleanor. Come in." The apartment was spotless, sterile. It smelled of vanilla and expensive chemical cleaning products. The walls were adorned with new, large-format photographs in minimalist black frames. Chloe and Lily, looking serene. Margaret and Lily, both beaming. Julian and Lily. There were none of me. "Can I hold her?" I asked, my arms physically aching with the need. Chloe hesitated, her eyes flickering. "She's just about to go down for her nap. Better later." Later never came. We ate a silent, tense lunch of quinoa salad and grilled asparagus. It was elegant and tasteless. I tried to make conversation, but everything felt forced. Chloe answered in monosyllables. Julian stared at his phone. When Lily fussed, Chloe immediately stood and whisked her away to the nursery. "Excuse us, nap time." Julian followed, a dutiful shadow. "I'll go help." I was left alone in the silent, white living room, staring at the photographs where I did not exist, finishing my cold coffee. I drove home that day with a familiar, heavy knot in my chest. But I reasoned with it. I bargained with my own pain. She's a new mother. She's anxious. She's bonded with her own mother. It's natural. It will get better. I clung to that hope, that flimsy straw, because the alternative that my son was building a life from which I was being deliberately and systematically erased was too terrible to face. The truth is, I remembered everything that came before. Before Chloe, before Margaret, before my son stopped calling me Mom and started calling me Eleanor whenever his wife was in the room. I remembered Sundays when Julian was a child, a whirlwind of messy hair and boundless energy. Arthur would be making bacon and eggs, and I'd be making biscuits from scratch. Julian, sleepy-eyed in his dinosaur pajamas, would stumble in and hug my legs. "Morning, Mommy?" We'd eat together at the worn oak table. We'd go to the park. He'd scrape his knee, a bloody, dramatic wound, and run past his father, straight to me. "Mommy, it hurts." And I would kiss it, clean it, put a colorful bandage on it, and the world would be right again. I was his refuge. I was his home base. When Arthur died, Julian was my rock. He was 27, but he moved home for 3 weeks. He held me during the funeral as I shook so hard I thought I would disintegrate. He helped me with the endless, suffocating paperwork. He sat with me on the nights when the silence in the house was a screaming, physical presence. "You're not alone, Mommy. I'm here. I'll always be here." But little by little, he pulled away. He met Chloe. And now, sitting in my kitchen years later, staring at a faded, chipped coffee mug he'd given me in high school, world's best mom, I wondered, when did I stop being his world? When did I become an inconvenience? 6 months passed in this new, cold reality. My calls became weekly, then bi-weekly. I was afraid of being the pushy mother-in-law. The answers were always the same. "We're busy, Mom." One day, I decided to go unannounced. I couldn't bear the silence any longer. I baked a red velvet cake, his absolute favorite since he was a boy, the one with the cream cheese frosting he used to eat with a spoon. I took an Uber to their building. I rang the doorbell, my heart thumping. It wasn't Julian or Chloe who answered. It was Margaret. She was dressed in an elegant beige lounge set. She looked perfectly at home. "Eleanor." What a surprise. That polite, devastating smile. "Hello, Margaret. I was in the neighborhood. I came to see Julian and the baby. I brought a cake." "Of course. Come in." She stepped aside. Chloe was on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, while Lily played on a mat at her feet. She looked up, annoyed. "Hello, Eleanor. What are you doing here?" The question, so blunt, was a slap. I came to visit. I brought cake." "Oh." She didn't look up from her phone. "Just leave it in the kitchen." Margaret followed me into the sterile, white kitchen. "You know, Eleanor," she said, her voice dripping with false, saccharine concern, "it's probably best to call before you come. Chloe has a very strict routine with the baby. Unexpected visits. They just add so much stress." "I'm Lily's grandmother," I said, my voice quiet but trembling. "I'm not an unexpected visit." "Of course not, dear," she smiled, patting my arm. "But you understand. Chloe is a modern mother. She's very informed. She reads all the latest books. It's not like it was in our day." The implication was clear. I was archaic. My instincts were useless. My presence was contamination. I wasn't allowed to hold Lily. She's just had her lunch, and she gets overstimulated before her nap. I sat in that silent living room for 30 agonizing minutes while Margaret and Chloe discussed diaper brands, sleep training methods, and their upcoming trip to Aspen. I left. I gave the entire, beautiful red velvet cake to the doorman on my way out. He looked at me with kind, pitying eyes. 2 weeks later, a text. An elegant, impersonal, digital invitation. You are invited to the christening of Lily Ann Delgado. I called Julian, my hands shaking. Mom, of course you're coming. It's at Chloe's parents' church in Newport. But just so you know, Margaret and Marcus are the godparents. And the party? It's just a small thing at their house afterward. Very intimate. Just 20 people. I was not one of the 20. I was an add-on. I sat in the third pew from the back, alone. At the lavish, catered party in their Newport Beach mansion, I was a ghost. I stood by the champagne fountain, nursing a glass of water, watching Margaret hold Lily, beaming, as she accepted compliments. I tried to hold my granddaughter. Julian saw me approaching, looked at Chloe across the room, and she gave a subtle, almost imperceptible shake of her head. Ah, better later, Mom. She's fussy. I left after 2 hours. No one said goodbye. No one noticed I was gone. That night, alone in my big, empty house, I finally understood. I had been replaced. I was a relic of a former life, a life my son was actively shedding, and he was letting it happen. The next call from Julian came a month later. His voice was bright, artificial. Mom, Chloe and I are thinking of moving. Out of the city. We need more space for Lily. That's wonderful, son. Then, a calculated pause. Mom, we've also been thinking. You're all alone in that big house in Pasadena. It's a lot of upkeep for you. I worry about it. The roof leaks, doesn't it? It's very run down. Maybe you should think about selling it. Get something smaller, more manageable. A cold dread washed over me. This is my home, Julian. It's where you grew up. I know, Mom, I know. But Dad's gone. It's just, memories aren't in the walls, Mom. It's just a practical thought. The phrase, coming from him, was a sharp, physical betrayal. This was the boy who had cried, when I threatened to throw away his old, broken Star Wars toys because they have memories, Mommy. He was using my own logic against me, but it was twisted, hollow. 3 months later, the other, heavier shoe dropped. Mom, we found the house. It's in Irvine. It's perfect. 4 bedrooms, a huge yard, great schools. His voice was nervous now, high-pitched. But, well, we need some help with the down payment. Our savings, they just aren't enough. Help how? I whispered, though I already knew. Well, we were thinking, if you sell your house, you could give us a part. You know, as an investment. In our future, in Lily's future, a gift. I couldn't breathe. Julian, that house is all I have. It's my security. I know, Mom, I know. But Chloe's parents already helped with half. A very generous amount. We thought you'd want to contribute too. To be even. There it was. The pressure, the comparison, the emotional blackmail. I had to be even with people who had generational wealth, or I was a bad mother. How much? I asked, my voice dead. $50,000. It was almost everything. It was the money Arthur and I had saved for our old age. The money that was now just for my old age. My safety net. My dignity. Let me think about it. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. I knew I could count on you. You're the best. I didn't sleep. I walked the halls of my house, talking to Arthur. What do I do, my love? He's our son. But this is all we have. I knew what Arthur would say. He'd tell me to protect myself. But he wasn't here, and the voice of my living, breathing son was. I went to the bank the next day. I liquidated my emergency fund. I withdrew the $50,000. I met them at a cold, impersonal coffee shop. Julian, bless his heart, had at least brought a promissory note. We'll pay you back in 2 years, Mom, with interest. I insist. I handed him the cashier's check. Thank you, Mom. You don't know what this means. Chloe, who had been silent, took the check from Julian's hand. She didn't even look at me. She didn't look at the check. She simply slipped it into her designer purse as if it were a grocery receipt. She never said thank you. I went home. And that night, I wept. I wept for my foolishness. I wept because I had just become an emotional ATM. I wept because I knew, with a soul-crushing certainty that chilled my bones, I would never see that money again. 4 months passed. They moved into their new, beautiful house in Irvine. They sent photos via text. "Look, Mom, we're all settled." They did not invite me to see it. I waited 1 week, 2, 3, nothing. Finally, I called. "Son, I'd love to see the new house. It looks beautiful in the pictures." "Oh yeah, Mom. Of course, we're just still unpacking. I'll let you know when." "I'll let you know when" never came. 2 months later, he called. "Mom, we're finally having a housewarming. A little family lunch next Sunday. Can you come?" My stupid heart leaped. "Of course, son. What can I bring?" "Don't bring anything, Mom. Chloe and Margaret have it all planned." I arrived, dressed in my best navy blue dress, the pearl earrings Arthur had given me. The house was magnificent. Marble floors, towering windows, a yard that looked like a private park. And there, on the main sofa, like royalty, sat Margaret and Marcus. I tried to be useful. I went to the kitchen. "Let me help," I offered. I found the housekeeper, a young, tired-looking woman from El Salvador. "No, ma'am, I can." "Please, I insist." We washed dishes together. She was kind. "Does Mrs. Margaret visit often?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She looked at me surprised. "Oh yes, ma'am, almost every day. She has her own bedroom upstairs." The dish in my hand slipped. I caught it. "Her own bedroom?" "Yes, ma'am. The big guest suite? It's decorated just for her. All her things are in there. Mr. Julian says it's so she can come whenever she wants, to help with the baby." Margaret had her own bedroom. I felt the floor tilt. I had given them $50,000 for this house, my life savings, and I wasn't even invited to see it for 6 months, while she had a permanent, decorated room. A key. A place. Later, in the pristine backyard, Lily, now walking, tripped and fell. She cried. I moved instantly, my grandmother's instincts screaming, but Margaret was faster. She scooped her up. "It's okay, my love. Grams is here. Grams has got you." Lily stopped crying and hugged Margaret tightly. "Grams," she cooed, her little face buried in Margaret's cashmere. "Grams?" Margaret looked directly at me, over Lily's head, a small, triumphant, reptilian smile playing on her lips. "It's her first word for a grandmother," she said, her voice like honey. "Isn't that precious?" I was just Eleanor. Never Grandma, never Grams, just Eleanor. I left an hour later. Julian walked me to the door, effusive. "Great you could come, Mom." "Son," I had to ask, my voice trembling, "why does Margaret have her own room here?" He had the grace to look uncomfortable. He scratched the back of his neck. "Well, Mom, she helps so much with Lily. You have no idea. Chloe really needs her. She's here all the time." "I could help too, Julian. I live 40 minutes away, the same as her." He sighed. That long, weary, impatient sigh. The sigh that told me I was a burden. "Mom, please, let's not make this a problem. You have to understand, Chloe and her mom, they have a very special relationship. I can't get in the middle of that." There it was. He had drawn the line. He had chosen his side. He was not going to defend me. He was not going to fight for my place. I was alone. "I understand," I said, and I left. I drove home, but I wasn't just in a car. I was in a void. I had been replaced. And my son, my only child, was holding the door open for my replacement. I stopped calling. I stopped texting. I decided, in the quiet of my kitchen, to conduct a small, painful experiment. I wanted to see how long it would take. How long before my son noticed I was gone. It took until December. A cold, formal, joyless text message, not from Julian, but from Chloe. "We invite you to the Christmas party at our house on December 23rd. Please RSVP." I went. I don't know why. Hope is a stubborn, stupid beast. I brought a gift for Lily, a soft, beautiful, hand-knitted giraffe. I had spent weeks on it, my fingers aching, every stitch a prayer, a desperate plea to be loved. I put my humble, soft gift under their enormous, glittering 10-foot tree. It was dwarfed by mountains of glossy, perfect boxes from Chanel and Tiffany. Later, they opened presents. Margaret went first. "This is from Grams, my love. A massive, 3-story wooden dollhouse, fully furnished, with working electric lights. It cost, I knew, hundreds of dollars." Then, Chloe, scanning the packages, picked up my gift. "Let's see, Lily. This one is from Eleanor. Not Grandma, just Eleanor." Lily, hyped up on sugar and presents, ripped open the bag. She pulled out the giraffe. She looked at it for a second, a flicker of confusion on her face. She touched its soft, woolen ear. And then she dropped it on the floor. "Next present," she demanded, reaching for a larger, shinier box. Everyone laughed. Julian, Chloe, Margaret. They all laughed, as if it were the cutest, most precocious thing. A small, sharp knife twisted in my heart. The giraffe lay forgotten on the carpet, a small, soft heap of my wasted love. I stood up. I went to the guest bathroom. I locked the door. I turned on the fan, and I cried in silence, my shoulders shaking, my hands stuffed in my mouth so no one would hear. I ate dinner alone in a corner. At 11 p.m., I left. "Thanks for the invitation." Julian barely looked up from his conversation. "Take care, Mom. Merry Christmas." I spent Christmas Day alone. I made a small turkey for myself. I put up my small, tabletop tree. I waited. He never called. He never texted. The day after Christmas, December 26th, at 3 p.m., he called. "Hello, Mom. How was your Christmas?" "It was peaceful, Julian." "Oh, good. Hey, why didn't you call? We would have invited you over." And for the first time, I felt not sadness, but a cold, pure, clarifying rage. "You would have invited me? You assumed I would come?" "I was invited to your party with a cold text message from your wife, Robert. But I was not invited to your family's Christmas dinner. What does that tell you?" "Mom, don't be dramatic. Don't say that." "It's the truth. And you let it happen. I gave you $50,000, Julian, my life savings, and you haven't just erased me, you've allowed them to. Margaret has a room in your house, and I'm not even welcome to hold my own granddaughter. Lily calls her Grams and calls me Eleanor. Your daughter threw my handmade gift on the floor, and you laughed. Mom, I don't want to fight about this." "Neither do I, son. I'm done." I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding, but I felt something. Not joy, but dignity. A long-forgotten acquaintance. The next month, in late January, he came to my house, unannounced. He rang the doorbell, and I saw him standing on my porch, looking nervous. "Mom, can we talk?" "Come in." He sat on Arthur's armchair, refusing to meet my eyes. "Mom, I need to talk to you. About the money we owe you." "What about the money?" "It's just, things have been hard. The mortgage, it's a lot. And Lily's private preschool is so expensive. And Chloe, she wants to remodel the kitchen. And, we haven't been able to save up any of the payments. 10 months have passed, Julian." He lowered his gaze, staring at his expensive shoes. "That's what I came to tell you. Chloe and I were thinking that, maybe you could consider the $50,000 a gift." The air left my lungs. "A gift?" "Yeah. As your contribution. To our family, to Lily's future. I mean, technically it's for her too. It's like a family investment." I looked at him. I stared, searching his face for the boy I raised, the child who loved me. He was gone. In his place was this weak, shuffling stranger. "Julian," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Your father and I earned that money with our work. It is my security. It is the only thing I have left. And you are asking me to just give it away." "Mom, don't start the drama again." "Drama?" I stood up. I was trembling. Asking for a place in my son's life is drama? Asking to be treated like a mother is drama? Asking to be paid back the money you promised to pay back is drama? Mom, you don't understand, he said, standing up, his voice rising. Margaret helps, she's present, she isn't. She isn't making it hard all the time. I can't be fighting with Chloe every single day because of you. There it was. The final, naked, brutal truth. I was the conflict. I was the problem. I was the stone in their shoe. I sat down. I took a deep, shuddering breath, and I felt the last thread connecting me to the woman I used to be, the loving, hopeful, endlessly forgiving mother snap. Okay, Robert. His anger dissipated, replaced by confusion. Okay. What? Okay. You don't have to pay me back. Consider the $50,000 a gift. He visibly relaxed. A slow smile of relief spread across his face. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. I knew you'd understand. But on one condition. His smile faltered. What? Don't ever ask me for anything again. Not money, not favors, not understanding, because I have nothing left to give you. Mom, don't be like that. I'm not being like that. I am setting a boundary, something I should have done a long, long time ago. You should leave, Robert. He stared at me, his mouth open, waiting for me to give in, to apologize, to soften. I did not. I just looked at him with cold, empty eyes. He left. I closed the door, leaned my forehead against the cool wood, and I cried for the last time. I cried for my lost son. I cried for my stolen money. I cried for my granddaughter, who would never know me. I cried for the life I had built, which had just collapsed. I cried until I had no tears left. And then, in the midst of that unbearable, silent pain, I made a decision. The next morning, I got up early. I dressed. I made coffee. And I called Arthur's old lawyer. Mr. Baker, it's Eleanor Johnson. Eleanor, how are you? It's been too long. I'm very well, thank you. I need to change my will. There was a profound, professional silence on the line. Eleanor, is everything all right? Everything is perfect. I want to disinherit my son. Another silence, this one longer, heavier. May I ask why, Eleanor? Because, Mr. Baker, he's already received his inheritance, and I want my house, I want my assets to go to someone who truly needs them. I want to donate my house. To the Pasadena Senior Center, the one on Holly Street. Eleanor, that is a very permanent decision. That is irreversible. I know. I've been thinking about it for months. I want this house, all my assets, to go to people who have been forgotten. People like me. I want it to be a refuge. 2 weeks later, the papers were drawn up and signed. My house, Arthur's house, was now the legal, binding property of the senior center, with the simple condition that I could live there, as a tenant, until I chose to move or passed away. I signed the last page, and I felt a peace so profound it was almost giddy. I had lost everything, but I had gained my dignity. And then came the invitation. Almost a year later, Christmas was approaching again. Julian called. His voice was strained, falsely bright. Mom, so Chloe and I, we're all spending Christmas at the new house. Her family is flying in, all of them. And we want you to be there. We want you to stay over. For Christmas Eve. It was an olive branch, a small, weak, pathetic-looking olive branch, but it was there. My stupid heart, against all logic, against all evidence, hoped, maybe he's sorry. Maybe he wants to fix this. I arrived on Christmas Eve, a small overnight bag in my hand. The house was blazing with lights. It was full. Margaret, Marcus, Chloe's aunt and uncle from Chicago, their 2 adult children. I was the only one on my side of the family, the token. That night, after a tense, elaborate dinner where I was largely ignored, Julian approached me, scratching the back of his neck, his eyes darting everywhere but at me. Mom. So, about the sleeping arrangements. It's really crowded. We had to give the guest suites to Chloe's family. Since they flew in, you know. That's fine, Julian. Just point me to a sofa. And, well, Margaret's room is Margaret's room, obviously. And we put her aunt in the other guest room. And the cousins are on the air mattresses in the office. Of course, I understand. Just, he wouldn't look at me. He just gestured down the hall, toward the laundry room, toward the door that led out of the house. You can sleep in the garage. There's an old cot out there. I looked at him. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, the man I had given $50,000 to. He was consigning me to the garage, on a cot, in December, like unwanted luggage, like a stray dog. While the family of the woman who despised me slept in luxury suites I had helped pay for. I see, I said. My voice was calm. It was frighteningly calm. Thank you for letting me know, Julian. I didn't make a sound. I didn't cause a scene. I went to the laundry room, retrieved my small bag, and carried it out to the cold, concrete garage. I sat on the rickety, dusty cot. I waited until 2 a.m. The house was silent. They were all asleep, dreaming, no doubt, of their inheritances. I took my small overnight bag. I walked silently out the side door of the garage, down the driveway, got in my car, and drove home to Pasadena. I sat in my green velvet armchair, the one Arthur used to sit in, and I watched the sun rise on Christmas morning. I didn't call my lawyer. I didn't need to. The papers were already signed. The bomb was already set. At 9 a.m., my phone rang. It was Julian, his voice frantic, panicked. Mom, where are you? We woke up, and you were gone, we thought. We didn't know what happened. I'm at home, Julian. What? Why? Why did you leave? We didn't even hear you. Because I am not a dog, Julian, I said, my voice quiet and clear. I am your mother, and you do not put your mother in a garage. Mom, we just didn't have space. You're overreacting. You had a 4-bedroom house full of space. You just chose to give it all to them. I took a breath. It doesn't matter. I called you to wish you a Merry Christmas. And also to inform you of something, since you're all gathered. What? What is it? As of this morning, I am moving out of my house. The donation I made to the Pasadena Senior Center is now fully and immediately executed. They will be taking possession on the 1st of the year. I've already signed the papers to move into my new apartment. Silence. A dead, cold vacuum of silence. What? What did you say? He whispered. I donated the house, Julian. The one you thought was run down. The one you were counting on as your inheritance. The one you and Chloe and Margaret were waiting for me to die in. It's gone. It belongs to 12 elderly people who have no one. I thought it was fitting. You what? His voice was a strangled shriek. You can't do that. That's my house. That's my inheritance. No, Julian, I said, and I felt a sudden lightness. It was my house. And you made your choice. You chose your new family. You chose their money. You chose to put your mother in a garage. And I've made my choice. I chose my dignity. I chose myself. He was screaming now, incoherent, animal sounds of rage and disbelief. I heard Chloe and Margaret in the background, their voices sharp. What is it, Julian? What's wrong? She gave it away, he choked out, the words tearing from his throat. The house. She gave the house away. I heard a shriek, a high, piercing sound. It was Chloe. You told me she was a fragile old woman. You told me she'd never do it. You idiot! I'm hanging up now, Julian, I said, my voice as clear as a bell. I truly hope the cot was comfortable for someone, because no one in your family will ever sleep in this house again. I hung up. 3 years have passed. I live in a small, bright apartment in Greenwich Village. It has a tiny balcony with pots full of flowers. The house in Pasadena is now the Arthur and Eleanor Johnson home, a beautiful, warm refuge for 12 seniors who were abandoned by their families. I visit them. I bring them cookies. They call me family. Julian's life, as I heard, imploded. When the inheritance I stole from them vanished, so did Chloe's tolerance for her disappointing husband. She filed for divorce. The house they bought with my money and her parents' money was sold in the bitter legal battle. She took Lily and moved back to Newport Beach. Julian lost everything. He called me, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, a broken, hollowed-out man. Mom, I lost everything. My house, my wife. Lily. Not everything, Julian, I said, my voice soft. You still have me. He's rebuilding. It's a slow, painful process. He's in therapy. He has a small apartment in a less fashionable part of town. He sees Lily on weekends. He met a woman, a kind, down-to-earth schoolteacher named Laura. They come to my apartment for dinner. He calls me Mom, again. Last week, he brought Lily to see me. She's 6 years old now. Daddy, she asked, looking at me with big, curious eyes. Is this the grandma who gave away the big house? Yes, honey, Julian said, his eyes meeting mine, filled with a sadness and a respect I had never seen before. This is the grandma who's a superhero. Lily looked at me, tilting her head. Grandma, why did you do it? I looked at this beautiful child, my granddaughter, and I knelt down and told her the truth. Because sometimes, my love, you have to let go of the things you think you own to find the things that truly matter. Your home isn't a building, it's not a place, it's a feeling. It's where you are loved, it's where you are respected. She thought for a moment, then launched herself into my arms and hugged my neck. I love you, Grandma. I learned, in the most brutal, painful way possible, that a mother's love should not be a blank check. It should not require you to erase yourself. True love is not about sacrifice, it's about mutual respect. And sometimes, the only way to save a relationship, the only way to find yourself, is to prove that you are willing to lose it. I lost a house, but I regained my son, and, in the process, after 56 long years, I finally found myself.